7 decades since the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, around 80 new fragments of the ancient texts have been revealed to the public.
They said some scrolls were lost to time, but what if AI just found what wasn't meant to be read? In 2021, archaeologists risked everything to reach a cave sealed for 60 years.
Amir from the cave, you hear me?
I hear you.
Come quickly, we've discovered amazing things.
Really? What'd you find?
What they uncovered wasn't just scripture. It was a story buried on purpose.
A 2,600-year-old prophecy is unfolding right now in the Middle East, and most people have no idea it's happening. The prophet Ezekiel described exactly what we are watching today at the Dead Sea, not symbolically, not metaphorically. Literally, what was once impossible is now being reported on the ground. And if this prophecy is coming true, then what comes next should have every Christian paying close attention. There is a place in the Middle East that sits at the lowest point on Earth. Nearly 1,400 feet below sea level, it is surrounded by desert on every side, and for thousands of years it has drawn people from across the world to its shores. It is called the Dead Sea, but today the Dead Sea is disappearing. Every single year the water level drops by about 3 feet. That may not sound like much, but when you stand at its shoreline and see the white salt crust stretching out across what used to be water, you begin to understand the scale of what is happening. The sea has already lost more than a third of its surface area, and it is still shrinking, but the water loss is only part of the story. As the water table beneath the ground drops, something dangerous is happening on the surface. The earth is collapsing. Sinkholes are opening up without warning, thousands of them, along the entire shoreline. Roads have cracked, buildings have been abandoned. What were once popular beaches are now closed off and fenced in because the ground beneath them could give way at any moment. Scientists and governments have known about this for decades. Proposals have been made, pipelines discussed, international agreements drafted, but very little has actually been done. The Dead Sea continues to shrink year after year, and here is what makes this even more striking. This region was not always a wasteland. Thousands of years ago, the land surrounding this sea was described in the Bible as lush and green. Genesis 13 says it was like the garden of the Lord, full of life, full of water, full of promise. So what happened? And more importantly, why does an ancient text written thousands of years ago describe what is happening here right now with such striking accuracy? That answer begins with a prophet. A vision, and a river that flows from an impossible place. Now here is where the story takes a turn that no one saw coming. As the Dead Sea pulls back from its shoreline, it leaves behind something unexpected. The sinkholes that have been forming along the edges of the sea are dangerous, yes, but inside some of them something remarkable has been discovered. Fresh water, not salt water, fresh water, pooling inside the very holes left behind by the retreating sea. Scientists believe underground freshwater springs are pushing up through the collapsed ground. And as the salt water recedes, these springs are finding new pathways to the surface. But that is not the part that stopped researchers in their tracks. Inside some of these freshwater pools, fish have been found, small fish, living and swimming in a place that sits at the edge of the saltiest body of water on Earth. Water so salty that nothing has been able to survive in it for centuries. And yet here in these pools just meters from the Dead Sea's shore there is life. Real life, swimming life. Now scientists have offered explanations, underground channels, migrating species, shifting water tables, and those explanations may all play a role. But for those who have read Ezekiel chapter 47, the explanation feels like it goes much deeper than geology. Because Ezekiel didn't just predict that the Dead Sea would one day have life in it, he described exactly how it would happen. Through water, flowing from a specific direction, healing what had been dead for generations. And what's even more remarkable is that Ezekiel wrote these words at a time when no one would have believed them possible. The Dead Sea was already known in the ancient world as a place where nothing lived. Writing about fish thriving there would have seemed like madness, unless you knew something no one else did. So what exactly did Ezekiel see, and how close does his description match what is being reported on the ground today? The answer is going to surprise you. Over 2,600 years ago, a man named Ezekiel received a vision. He was a priest, a prophet. And at the time he received this vision, he was living in exile far from his homeland. Far from Jerusalem, far from the temple he loved. And yet God showed him something that would take thousands of years to fully understand. In the vision, Ezekiel was taken to the temple in Jerusalem, and from beneath the temple door he saw something flowing, water, just a trickle at first, moving east, moving down through the desert valley toward the lowest point on earth. And as the water flowed it grew, ankle deep, then knee deep. Then waist deep, then too deep to cross. A river rushing toward the Dead Sea, and when it reached the sea everything changed. Ezekiel 47 verse 8 records these words. These waters go out toward the eastern region and go down into the Arabah, then they go toward the sea being made to flow into the sea, and the waters of the sea are healed. The waters are healed, not filtered, not treated, healed. That word in the original Hebrew carries the meaning of restoration. Of something broken being made whole again, and the passage continues. Wherever the river flows, there will be many living creatures. Fish will be abundant, for the waters from the temple will make the salty waters fresh. Life will flourish wherever this water flows. Ezekiel 47 verse 9. Now read that again slowly. Fish, abundant, in the Dead Sea. Written 2,600 years ago, at a time when such a thing was considered completely impossible, but Ezekiel was not the only prophet who saw this. Zechariah chapter 14 verse 8 describes living water flowing out from Jerusalem, half toward the eastern sea, half toward the western sea, and the passage connects this moment to something even larger, to a day when God himself will reign over all the earth. Two prophets, two visions, one location, one unmistakable description, and both of them point to something happening right now. But before we go further, there is one question that has to be answered. Can these prophecies actually be trusted? That is a fair question. And it deserves a straight answer, because anyone can make a prediction. Anyone can write something down and claim it will happen one day. The real test is whether it actually comes true. And when it comes to biblical prophecy, the track record is unlike anything else in human history. Consider the ancient city of Tyre. In Ezekiel 26, written around the same time as the Dead Sea prophecy, Ezekiel made a series of very specific predictions about this powerful coastal city. He said its walls would be torn down, its stones and timber would be thrown into the sea, it would become a bare rock, a place where fishermen spread their nets, and it would never be rebuilt. At the time, Tyre was one of the most powerful trading cities in the world. The idea that it would be completely destroyed and never rebuilt would have seemed impossible. But that is exactly what happened. First, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar attacked the city and destroyed it on the mainland. Then years later, Alexander the Great took the rubble from the destroyed city and used it to build a causeway stretching out into the sea to reach the island fortress where the remaining inhabitants had fled. The stones, the timber, thrown into the sea word for word. Today the original site of Tyre remains largely bare, and fishermen still work along that stretch of coastline. A prophecy written 2,600 years ago, fulfilled in exact detail. But that is not the only example. Ezekiel also predicted that the people of Israel would be scattered across the nations and then gathered back to their own land. For nearly 2,000 years, the Jewish people lived without a homeland, scattered across the earth. And then in 1948, the modern state of Israel was established, a nation reborn in a single day, just as Isaiah 66 verse 8 described. Can a country be born in a day? Isaiah asked that question thousands of years ago. In 1948, the world watched it happen. So when Ezekiel describes fish swimming in the Dead Sea, and scientists are now finding exactly that, the question is no longer whether this prophecy can be trusted. The question is what comes next. Here is what most people miss when they read Ezekiel's vision of the Dead Sea. It is not just about water. It is not just about fish. It is not just about a physical place being restored. It is about something much deeper. Throughout the Bible, God uses physical things to point to spiritual realities. The Dead Sea itself is a picture of what happens when life is cut off from its source. The Jordan River used to flow into it, bringing fresh water down from the north. But the Dead Sea has no outlet. The water comes in, but it never flows out. And over time, the minerals concentrate. The salt builds up, and nothing can survive. It is a picture of death, of judgment, of separation from God. But in Ezekiel's vision, everything changes. Water flows from the temple, from the very presence of God. And wherever that water goes, it brings life. What was dead becomes alive. What was barren becomes fruitful. What was broken becomes healed. And that is exactly what God promises to do with his people. In Ezekiel 36, just a few chapters before the Dead Sea vision, God speaks to the nation of Israel. He says, I will take you from among the nations and bring you back into your land. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. Ezekiel 36 verses 24 through 26. A new heart, a new spirit, clean water that washes away the old and brings in the new. As the land is restored, so are the hearts of God's people, and this is not just an Old Testament idea. In the book of John chapter 7, Jesus stood in Jerusalem during a feast and declared, if anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, streams of living water will flow from within them. Living water, flowing from the presence of God. Bringing life to what was dead. The Dead Sea is not just a location, it is a symbol, and what is happening there now is not just a geological event. It is a sign, a preview, a glimpse of something much larger that is still to come, because the Dead Sea is not the only thing coming back to life. Look at the land of Israel itself. For nearly 2,000 years it was desolate, conquered, ruled by empires. The Jewish people were scattered to every corner of the earth, their language nearly lost. Their homeland out of reach, and to most people it looked like Israel was finished, but God had other plans. In 1948, Israel became a nation again. The Jewish people began returning from over 100 countries. The Hebrew language was revived, cities were rebuilt, deserts began to bloom. What was barren and dry started producing crops again. Today, Israel exports food to other nations. Forests have been planted where there was once only sand. Mark Twain visited the region in 1867 and described it as a desolate country whose soil is rich enough but is given over wholly to weeds. A silent, mournful expanse. He saw no living thing, not even a bird. That same land today is green, thriving, alive. And all of this was predicted. Ezekiel 36 verse 35 says, "Then they will say, this land that was laid waste has become like the Garden of Eden. The cities that were lying in ruins are now fortified and inhabited, from wasteland to garden, from death to life." Exactly as the prophets described. But there is one more piece, one more part of the pattern that matters more than all the rest. The prophecies about Israel returning to their land are directly connected to the prophecies about the Messiah, about Jesus. Romans 11 verse 15 says, "If their rejection brought reconciliation to the world, what will their acceptance mean but life from the dead?" Life from the dead. The Apostle Paul is saying that when the Jewish people as a nation recognize Jesus as their Messiah, it will be like resurrection for the entire world. And that process has already started. More Jewish people have come to faith in Jesus in the last 75 years than in the previous 1,900 years combined. The land is being restored, the people are returning, hearts are being changed, and the Dead Sea is showing signs of life. So what does all of this mean for those of us watching today? It means the pieces are moving into place, not randomly, not by accident. But exactly as the prophets described thousands of years ago, Ezekiel's vision of the Dead Sea does not end with fish swimming in fresh water. It goes much further. The vision describes trees growing along the riverbanks, fruit every month, leaves that are used for healing, and fishermen standing along the shore casting their nets. Ezekiel 47 verse 10 says there will be places for spreading nets. The fish will be of many kinds like the fish of the great sea. That has not happened yet. Not fully. What we are seeing now is just the beginning, a preview, a sign that points to something much greater still ahead, and that something is described at the very end of Ezekiel's prophecy. In chapter 48 verse 35, the city of Jerusalem is given a new name, and the name of the city from that day shall be, "The Lord is there." The Lord is there, God himself dwelling with his people, present, reigning, restoring all things. The Apostle John saw this same reality in the book of Revelation. He describes a river flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb, clear as crystal, flowing down the middle of the great street of the city. And on each side of the river stood the tree of life bearing 12 crops of fruit, and the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. Revelation 22 verses 1 and 2, healing, restoration, life where there was once death. This is not just poetry, it is a promise, a future reality that has already begun breaking into our present world. And Jesus himself said, "When you see these things beginning to take place, stand up and lift up your heads because your redemption is drawing near." Luke 21 verse 28, the Dead Sea is not just receding, it is preparing. The land is not just changing, it is being made ready. But there is something happening right now in Jerusalem that connects all of this in a way most people are completely unaware of. Because while the world focuses on politics and headlines, something else is quietly unfolding in Israel that almost no one is talking about. Jewish scholars are studying the ancient temple plans. Priestly garments have been recreated according to biblical specifications. The vessels, the instruments, everything needed for temple worship is being prepared, not hidden away in storage, but displayed, ready. And according to Ezekiel's vision, the river that heals the Dead Sea does not flow from just anywhere. It flows from the temple, which raises one unavoidable question. If the vision describes water flowing from a temple and the Dead Sea is already beginning to show signs of life, then what does that mean about the temple itself? The prophecy is not complete, not yet, but it is in motion. The land is being restored, the people have returned, life is appearing where there was only death, and the river Ezekiel saw is already beginning to flow. What happens when it reaches full strength is something the world is not prepared for.